My son was mowed down and killed by John Camfield, an ex-cop who chose to drink your sorrows away, and then get behind the wheel.
He had been with the Miami Police Force for more than 20 years.
And now he has to pay the price.
It was sentencing day for a former police chief. Donald Solomon told undercover agents he was the best cop money could buy, and now he's going to prison for
11 years, 3 months. Stood before the judge and apologized to his children, the FBI, law enforcement in general, for violating his personal and public trust.
This is Nouman Raja, a police officer who was found guilty of manslaughter by culpable negligence and attempted first-degree murder with a firearm for the shooting death of Corey Jones, a 31-year-old musician and housing inspector. Jones was fatally shot while waiting for help on the roadside with his broken-down car. The incident received considerable media coverage due to its connection to a pattern of similar cases involving black individuals being killed by law enforcement officers. Corey Jones's loved ones conveyed their grief and anger through heartfelt messages, expressing their sorrow over the ongoing acts of violence within their community.
This should have never happened. My uncle should still be with us alone.
Prosecutors presented evidence revealing that in the early hours of August 18, 2015, Nouman Raja, while on duty but in plain clothes, encountered a seemingly abandoned car by the roadside. Approaching the car, he engaged in a brief conversation with its occupant, Corey Jones, who was seeking assistance. Jones, legally carrying a purchased firearm, was then approached by Raja. Raja claimed Jones aimed the pistol at him, while the prosecution argued Raja fired as Jones attempted to flee. Within seconds of the initial interaction, Raja fired 6 shots, 3 of which struck and killed Jones. Following the trial, the court issued a statement sentencing Raja to 25 years in prison for each of the charges: manslaughter by culpable negligence and attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. These sentences would be served concurrently, meaning Raja would serve both sentences simultaneously.
On count 1, I hereby sentence him to 25 years in the Department of Corrections. And on count 2, I hereby sentence Mr. Raja to 25 years in the Department of Corrections.
This is William Melendez, a former police officer from Michigan who was found guilty of assaulting a black man during a routine traffic stop.
With his hands extended out of his driver's window, he was grabbed out, thrown to the ground, and struck 16 times in the head.
The complete incident was captured by the officer's dashboard camera, providing an undeniable record of the events. When Judge Vonda Evans reviewed the footage, she did not mince her words when it came time for sentencing.
I would have thought this: what crime did I commit? Being a black man in a Cadillac, stopped for a minor traffic offense by a group of racist police officers looking to do it. After hearing the defendant and his fellow officers joke about his injuries as they were wiping blood off their uniforms with disinfectant. 2015. Please be quiet in my courtroom.
And now, let's hear the perspective of the reprehensible officer in question.
Mr. Dent and his family, I am truly sorry.
Melendez received his sentence for his actions, being ordered to serve a prison term ranging from 13 months to a maximum of 10 years for his misconduct.
Now at 5:30, it was sentencing day for a police officer who was convicted of attacking a male nurse at Jackson Memorial Hospital. That attack happened back in May of last year. That officer was fired for that incident. He had been with the Miami Police Force for more than 20 years.
And now he has to pay the price for slamming the nurse to the ground.
This is Lester Bonenblust, 51, who has been convicted of assaulting and aggressively throwing a male nurse to the ground at Jackson Memorial Hospital. His charges include violence against a person over 65 and false detention. The incident occurred after Bonenblust's niece, dealing with mental health issues, was discharged from the hospital. Her father returned the following day seeking readmission, but medical professionals determined she didn't meet the criteria. In response, he called his brother, Bonenblust, who was also a law enforcement officer. Upon arriving at the hospital, Bonenblust was informed by a nurse that discussing the patient's issue in a public area was inappropriate. They moved to a quieter spot for privacy. However, Bonenblust turned aggressive, grabbing the nurse's jacket and throwing him to the ground. Surveillance footage revealed that Bonenblust had approached the nurse from behind. The nurse resisted and demanded he let go. Subsequently, Bonenblust was terminated from his 20-year police career due to this incident.
Count 1, battery on a person 65 years of age or older, and guilty on 1 count of false imprisonment.
This is James Nicholson, a retired 66-year-old nurse who witnessed the heartbreaking incident. Nicholson, who had to leave his nursing career behind due to a knee injury, shared his perspective on the incident.
To a point where I was yelling at the top of my lungs, help, help. What happened to me that day should not happen to anybody, especially a healthcare worker.
When Miami-Dade County Judge Marissa Tinkler Mendez delivered the verdict last Friday, Bonenblust's family was overwhelmed with emotion. The judgment decreed a 45-day imprisonment for Bonenblust, to be succeeded by 3 years of probation. Alongside these penalties, he is also required to complete 100 hours of community service.
County teenager killed getting off of his school bus. She's now demanding justice for the ex-cop who hit her son. And today, a judge sentenced John Canfield to 35 years in.
This is John Canfield, the individual behind a deeply distressing incident where he struck 5 children as they were making their way to their bus stop. Amidst the sorrow that enveloped this tragic situation, the family of one of the young victims, Jaheim Robertson, stepped forward to deliver a heartfelt plea. Within the courtroom, it was evident that Jaheim's parents were grappling with an immense sense of grief. Overcome by the weight of their loss, they eventually found the strength to break their silence, using their voices to convey the profound emotions they were experiencing.
You don't know the pain that you have caused. Oh, my son was mowed down and killed by John Camfield, an ex-cop who chose to drink your sorrows away, and then get behind the wheel.
Investigation into the incident revealed a troubling detail about John Camfield's state. It's suspected that he was operating a vehicle with a blood alcohol level that was twice the legal limit when he collided with 5 students from Dundee Ridge Middle Academy who were walking near their designated bus stop. This unsettling discovery points to the fact that he was driving under the influence of alcohol during the time of this tragic event.
They're screaming, saying, "Daddy, help me."
In an unexpected turn of events, an off-duty officer associated with the Polk County Sheriff's Office, accompanied by his father, took it upon themselves to give chase to the suspect. Jonathan Quintana, one of the individuals caught up in this incident, vividly recalls the pivotal moment when Camfield's actions had devastating consequences. The impact of this tragic event, which claimed the lives of several young individuals, stirred up a wave of poignant emotions and profound reflections among those who were directly affected.
Advise your daughter.
Camfield has put forth an explanation for the incident, asserting that he experienced a medical crisis at the time. He attributes his blackout to a liver issue, implying that his health condition played a significant role in the unfolding of events. According to his account, his medical emergency was a contributing factor that led to the unfortunate series of actions.
Of controlling the events that occurred on April 27th. I had not been drinking at all that day.
Consequences for Camfield's actions have been severe. The judge, responding to the gravity of the situation, made the decision to revoke his driver's license permanently. In addition to this, the potential legal outcome looms even larger. Camfield faces the possibility of a life sentence in prison as a result of the actions he took on that fateful day. This is Michael Reynolds, a police officer hailing from New York City. As documented in court records, he arrived in Nashville on a Sunday morning in July 2018, embarking on a 3-night bachelor celebration getaway, along with 6 other individuals, including 2 fellow officers from the New York City Police Force. However, approximately 18 hours into their stay, Officer Reynolds, who is white, found himself in a distressing situation. Intoxicated and consumed by anger, he forcefully kicked open the door of a black woman's residence. His actions took a disturbing turn as he proceeded to threaten both the woman and her sons, using racial slurs and abusive language. Amid his fury, he shockingly uttered the alarming words, "I'll break every bone in your neck." Following this alarming incident, he swiftly retreated to his adjacent Airbnb property, narrowly evading the law enforcement officers who were responding to the scene.
I understand that he has claimed that this was an accident, but you cannot accidentally kick in somebody's door You cannot accidentally threaten to break their necks. You cannot accidentally hurl racial slurs.
A portion of the incident was captured on camera from a neighboring house.
Terrorized the home while Halliburton and her children were still inside.
Reynolds entered a plea of not guilty in response to 4 charges stemming from the incident. Subsequently, he was handed a sentence of 15 days in prison, along with 3 years of probation.
No justice! No justice!
Reynolds' resignation comes one day after a rally in New York demanding the NYPD to fire him.
Is to demand answers from the NYPD about why Michael Reynolds is still employed.
Despite the outcome of his case, he continued to hold his position as a police officer, sparking significant backlash against the New York Police Department. The incident ignited a wave of outrage, leading to more than 10,000 individuals signing an online petition that demanded his immediate dismissal. The petition also extended support and empathy to Kenise Halliburton, the woman whose home he had invaded.
There's been weeks of mounting pressure and an online petition garnering 12,000 votes. Even NBA star LeBron James weighing in on his sentencing with this tweet. While Horwitz likes the result, he still questions why the police department didn't take action early on.
Daniel Horwitz, the legal representative for Kenise Halliburton, characterized Michael Reynolds as an individual with a propensity for violence and a concerning inclination towards racism. In an email statement, Horwitz emphasized that Reynolds should not be entrusted with a badge or a firearm due to his volatile and hazardous nature. Horwitz went on to underscore Ms. Halliburton's position, asserting that she firmly and vehemently called upon the New York Police Department to promptly terminate Reynolds' employment. This demand was rooted in the goal of preventing any further harm that could arise from his actions.
Danger to a lot of people when police officers who lack impulse control and integrity are on the force.
The consequences for Officer Reynolds are substantial. Devora Kaye, the acting deputy commissioner for public information, clarified that he would not be eligible for a pension or health benefits. Moreover, he would be prohibited from carrying a pistol. Kaye underscored the fact that Reynolds' actions stood in stark contradiction to the principles and expectations that the New York City Police Department holds for its members. In court, Officer Reynolds expressed remorse and offered an apology. He explained that he had no recollection of the incident due to his heavy consumption of alcohol. Throughout his testimony, he repeatedly expressed his regrets, admitting his mistake and acknowledging that he had consumed an excessive amount of alcohol. This is Amber Geiger, a former police officer from Dallas. Today was a day she had been dreading, the day of the judgment. As the verdict was announced, her fears became reality, and it was even worse than she had imagined.
The jury unanimously find the defendant, Amber Geiger, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment. No outburst.
Taking a deep breath, Geiger fought back tears, her emotions overwhelming her. A court officer stood by her side, gently running a comforting hand through her hair, trying to offer solace in this difficult moment. Meanwhile, Botham Jean's family felt a sense of relief wash over them as the judgment was pronounced. Throughout the trial, countless individuals had attended each day's proceedings, all wearing red, a tribute to Botham's cherished color. In a moment of pure joy, Jean's mother raised her arms in triumphant celebration, acknowledging the victory that had been achieved. Outside the courthouse, the air was filled with the voices of supporters, their cheers echoing in support of the guilty verdict that had been reached. Leaving the courtroom, Amber Geiger managed to maintain a composed facade, but the moment she was out of the camera's view, her emotions overwhelmed her, and tears streamed down her face. Nearby, her relatives sat in their seats, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief, struggling to come to terms with the verdict. As the trial's sentencing phase looms, the potential of a life behind bars hangs heavily over Geiger. The guilty conviction stands as a stark outcome, a result of her actions that led to the death of a 26-year-old accountant who was simply returning home from church. The tragic incident unfolded in an apartment that wasn't hers. She had mistakenly entered, believing it was her own. In a crucial piece of evidence, body camera footage revealed Geiger leading fellow officers to the apartment in the aftermath of the shooting. Throughout the footage, she can be heard reiterating her belief that she had been in her own apartment at the time of the incident, a statement that echoed throughout the trial. Throughout the trial proceedings, her testimony held the entire nation in captivation.
No police officer ever would hurt an innocent person.
Her legal representatives argued that it was an unfortunate mistake, a grave error on her part. However, there are doubts among some that the verdict will remain unchanged in the future.
This is probably a defective verdict, meaning defense counsel will ask the court to reduce the verdict from murder to aggravated manslaughter.
The judgment holds immense importance, as stated by a lawyer representing the Jean family. This case stands out as a rare instance where a police officer has been convicted in a racially charged situation. The implications of this verdict are substantial and far-reaching.
A huge victory, not only for the family of both Jean, but as his mother Allison told me a moment ago, this is a victory for black people in America.
2 police officers were convicted and received prison sentences of 25 years and 18 years, respectively. This case marked the largest corruption scandal in the history of the Baltimore police. The leader of the corrupt task force was sentenced to 25 years, while another member received a sentence of 18 years.
Vic, Sergeant Wayne Jenkins got 25 years in federal prison earlier today, and moments ago, Detective Marcus Taylor got an 18-year sentence. He gave a rambling speech to the judge. He says he is innocent. He vows to fight this. She says that she regrets that he feels he wasn't treated fairly. She gave the government exactly what they wanted. Again, an 18-year sentence for him. Judge sentenced Sergeant Wayne Jenkins to 25 years in federal prison.
You have a gun and cocaine, probably I would say 2 1/4 just by looking at it.
The former head of the corrupt Baltimore Police Gun Trace Task Force wept and apologized for crimes that prosecutors say included at least 10 armed robberies, planting evidence, falsifying overtime, and selling $1 million worth of drugs.
This is Matthew Davis, a former La Mesa police officer who is at the center of a highly debated arrest video. The question of whether he will be charged for fabricating a police report hangs in the balance. The preliminary examination of Matthew Davis has recently drawn to a close. Stemming from the incident that ignited days of protests, he now faces allegations of knowingly presenting a falsified police report. Once again, the arrest footage took the spotlight within the courtroom. A clear divide exists between the backers of the discharged officer, who remain convinced that the case lacks merit, and those advocating for Amari Johnson, who assert that the charges leveled against Davis fall short of addressing the issue at hand. In a courtroom scene, Matthew Davis, once a La Mesa police officer, appeared with a clean-shaven look and attired in a suit. With a composed demeanor, he listened attentively as Detective Julie Jensen took the stand. Her testimony shed light on the events surrounding Davis's encounter with Amari Johnson. According to Jensen, Davis's initial reason for approaching Johnson was his suspicion that he was smoking on the Grossmont streetcar platform. Jensen further asserted that the former officer stated Johnson had engaged in physical aggression.
Mr. Johnson swatted at his hand or pushed his hand.
Recordings from body cameras and onlookers provide a glimpse into a tense exchange that transpired in May 2020. The footage, both from the perspective of the officer and bystanders, captured a segment of the intense interaction that unfolded during that time. During the incident, Johnson offered an explanation, detailing that he was on the search for a friend who resided in a nearby apartment complex.
I'm talking to you and you smacked me. Bro, nobody smacked you, bro. Where I smacked you? You didn't? Where I smacked you? You didn't hit my arm?
Initially, Johnson's encounter with law enforcement began when he was approached due to smoking in a public area. However, the situation escalated swiftly, and he was subsequently informed that he was being held for allegedly assaulting an officer. Eventually, all charges against him were dropped. In a turn of events, the focus shifted to Matthew Davis, the former La Mesa police officer. He now faced a serious charge as the district attorney pressed a felony count against him for submitting a fabricated police report. The allegations against Davis claimed that he had provided misleading information, asserting that Johnson was involved in smoking and evading fare payment at the trolley station. Within the courtroom, local activists made their presence felt as they rallied in support of Johnson. Their appearance served as a visual demonstration of solidarity and backing for his cause.
This report is that he thought he was smoking.
He didn't think he was smoking because he had no cigarettes, he had no lighter, he didn't even raise a lit object to his lips. This is a lie.
The encounter took place merely days following the tragic murder of George Floyd, an incident that triggered widespread anger and protest within the local community. The timing of this meeting amplified the existing outrage and added a layer of intensity to the situation. For those rallying behind the dismissed police officer, the lens through which they view the entire scenario is political.
Days after this George Floyd incident, it's very volatile. I mean, our society, they want to demonize police officers. It's time that we stand up and support our police officers.
Dagus later faces 3 years in prison. This is Noah Lennon, a former Warren police officer who issued an apology for his involvement in a false claim regarding a shooting incident.
As a result of my actions, I caused panic in the community, caused citizens of the African American community to be targeted and inconvenienced.
This incident took place back in January 2020, prompting a frantic search by fellow police officers to identify the supposed perpetrator. However, it was later revealed that the information provided was inaccurate. As a consequence of his actions, Noah Lennon will be serving a jail sentence.
Ashamed of my actions on that day.
Noah Lennon, previously a Warren police officer who now carries the label of a felon, had a significant moment in court. It was the first instance since his arrest that he directly spoke to the court, shedding light on the events that unfolded on January 13th of the preceding year.
Police officer who had sworn to uphold and follow the law, from someone who made police work his life and would never do anything that would jeopardize not only his image, but the image of all officers everywhere, to someone who was so broken that I made a series of bad decisions.
According to the prosecutors, on that particular day, it's alleged that Lennon experienced a mental breakdown. He used his police-issued radio to report a distressing incident where he claimed he was targeted by a black man in a dark-colored SUV who supposedly fired at him. This distress call triggered a massive response, with around 60 police officers rushing to his aid and conducting traffic stops. The situation escalated to the extent that officers encircled an entire apartment complex, hoping to locate the alleged perpetrator. However, upon thorough investigation, it was revealed that Lennon's account of the events was fabricated. The incident that had set off such a significant police operation turned out to be false.
Black man in a hoodie is a very suspect statement made in today's society right now. And the court can't.
Lennon stated that he had sought professional medical assistance and received a diagnosis for a serious condition, although he didn't provide further details about the nature of that condition.
I hope that all those affected can forgive me, as I am truly sorry for what I did and what problems it caused.
The damage that Mr. Lennon did to the Warren City Police Department and the African American community in Warren City, there's nothing that he can do to make up for that.
Lennon's sentence was determined to be 9 months of confinement in the Lorain Correctional Institution. This penalty was imposed due to his failure to fulfill the obligation of paying over $10,000 in reparations to the police officers who had responded to the incident that night. This is Michael Dotro, a former police officer from Edison, who engaged in a string of retaliatory plots against fellow officers whom he believed had mistreated him during his tenure on the force. This vengeful series of actions led him to commit a grave act, maliciously setting fire to his supervisor's residence. As he stood before the court for his arraignment, Dotro was confronted with a multitude of charges. These included counts of attempted murder, aggravated arson, official misconduct, conspiracy to interfere with a witness, and conspiracy to retaliate. The charges of attempted murder and arson stem from an event that occurred on May 23, 2013. During this incident, Dotro employed 2 containers filled with gasoline to deliberately ignite a fire at his supervisor's home. The supervisor, along with his wife, their 2 children, and even his 92-year-old mother, were all inside the residence when the fire was set. While the property sustained significant damage, thankfully no injuries were incurred by any of the occupants. Throughout the trial, which lasted approximately an hour, Dotro remained entirely silent. The judge shared their perspectives on the matter while Dotro chose not to speak.
Because of what this individual has done, because of him and people like him.
In recent years, Michael Dotro's life has been marred by a series of legal troubles, in addition to the attempted murder and arson accusations. One instance involved him facing charges of official misconduct. It was alleged that he accessed police records and shared information with his wife about a tire slashing incident that supposedly involved a woman he had a relationship with. Dotro's legal woes continued as he pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges. This stemmed from his desire for retaliation against a North Brunswick police officer who had issued a drunk driving citation to someone else. These incidents together underscore Dotro's tendency to eschew divine justice and instead take matters into his own hands to seek retribution.
But what he's really done, and what we're going to be left with after he's walking out the door, to spend the next third of his life in prison.
Dotro received his sentencing, with the court ordering him to serve 20 years in prison for the charge of attempted murder. In addition, he was given a 10-year prison term for the offense of aggravated arson and another 10 years for official misconduct. The legal consequences continued to pile up as he was handed down a 5-year prison sentence for his involvement in a conspiracy to interfere with a witness. Furthermore, he faced an 18-month prison term for his role in a conspiracy to retaliate. Crucially, it's important to note that all these prison terms will be carried out concurrently. This means that he will serve the longest sentence first, which is the 20-year term for attempted murder, and subsequently, the other penalties will be served in succession. This is Charlie Reeder at his sentencing hearing. The former Pike County Sheriff has admitted guilt to 2 charges: stealing while in office and tampering with evidence. The accusations against him revolve around allegations of unlawfully appropriating $5,000 in cash that had been retrieved from previous cases. In the current moment, he stands before Judge Patricia Cosgrove, who will decide the duration of his sentence for these offenses. Clearly displaying emotions, Reeder pleads for leniency from the judge. In his heartfelt plea, he requests the minimum possible punishment and suggests the opportunity for community service as a form of restitution. His words reveal a deep desire to make amends for his actions, and he awaits the judge's decision with a sense of remorse and hope for a second chance.
I stand here before you today to take accountability for my actions. As a sheriff of Ohio, I shed bad light on the office of sheriff. For this, I'm terribly sorry.
Following his genuine expression of remorse for the offenses he committed, Reeder earnestly implores the court to take into account the potential repercussions that a jail sentence could have on his family. He emphasizes the far-reaching effects that his actions and subsequent punishment could have on his loved ones.
So that I have the opportunity to watch my son graduate from high school. My daughter is getting married in October, so that I can be there for her.
As the defendant concludes his address, the judge has just one question left to ask. In his statement, Reeder discloses that a substantial portion of the money he obtained was directed towards funding charitable initiatives within the town. However, it's also come to light that he had amassed a substantial gambling debt. Despite his explanation, it appears that the court remains unmoved by his answers and the circumstances he outlines. The judgment is delivered, and Reeder is handed a sentence of 6.5 years. However, due to the concurrent nature of certain offenses, he will spend 3 years behind bars, with these sentences being served consecutively. Alongside the prison time, he faces additional consequences. He is prohibited from pursuing public office within Ohio, and is also restricted from engaging in work as a peace officer. These rulings highlight the weight of the court's decision and the impact it will have on Reeder's future. This is Zachary Wester at his trial in Jackson County, Florida. He is a former sheriff's deputy facing charges of racketeering, fabricating evidence, false imprisonment, and possession of controlled substances. Wester is accused of planting drugs in several vehicles during random traffic stops.
They say it appears to be an illegal narcotic. Do you know anything about that? I do not.
Despite all of the drivers denying ownership of the drugs, the majority of them were still arrested. These arrests raised suspicion internally, leading to Wester's suspension in 2018. 3 years later, the case finally went to trial, where Wester pleaded not guilty to all charges.
This is a case about an abuse of an incredible power, about the abuse of the incredible trust that we all put, and we have to put, in law enforcement.
The prosecution used the defendant's own body camera footage as evidence to support their argument in court. Stephen Van, who had a criminal record, had recently been released from jail when Wester allegedly discovered methamphetamine in his car.
I'm just trying to figure out how that stuff got in your car. You're gonna go to jail today for possession of methamphetamine, okay? Oh man, dude, I'm serious, dude. Seriously, what you want me to do, man?
Similar to the other drivers who testified, Van allowed the officer to search his car as he believed he had nothing to hide.
And I knew my truck was coming. I knew it was.
During the trial, the jury was able to view the majority of the recorded traffic stops. However, it was discovered that some recordings had mysteriously vanished and were no longer available.
Why in the world would that have been deleted? I wish I knew that answer.
Interestingly, the body camera footage turned out to be the most compelling evidence for the prosecution, particularly in the case involving Teresa Odom.
Hi, how are you? I'm good.
At first, the officer is very polite and even a bit playful.
The vehicle need to be concerned about bombs, hand grenades, rocket launchers. Okay.
As Odom stands near the vehicle, Wester initiates the search. It is worth noting that as he gets ready to put on his gloves, there is a small item visible in his left hand. Prosecutors contend that Wester concealed a small bag of methamphetamine in his palm, which he then alleged to have discovered alongside a spoon inside the vehicle.
Miss Odom.
It is yogurt, sir.
I know. Okay.
It's yogurt.
How about this, though?
That is not mine. No, sir.
Okay.
Now, the white small plastic baggie that was in that spoon that the deputy just showed you on this video, had you ever seen that before?
No, sir.
Was that in your car?
No, sir.
Regarding motive, the prosecution argues that the 28-year-old officer was ambitious and eager to advance to narcotics investigations as swiftly as he could. In contrast, Wester testified under oath that he never planted any drugs.
Drugs were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
After 5 days of testimony and numerous witnesses, the jury was tasked with delivering a verdict. If Wester is found guilty on all charges, he could face a life sentence in prison. Following 7 hours of deliberation, the jury returns with its verdict.
In the state of Florida versus Zachary Tyler Wester, we the jury find as follows as to the counts charged in the information. Count 1, guilty of racketeering as charged.
The clerk proceeded to announce the verdicts for all 67 charges.
7, guilty of official misconduct as charged.
Overall, the corrupt officer was convicted on 19 charges.
Count 9, guilty of official misconduct as charged. Count 10, guilty of official misconduct as charged.
The officer's convictions encompassed instances of misconduct during the arrests of both Van and Teresa Odom. Out of the 12 drivers involved, 11 of them filed civil lawsuits against Wester. In July 2021, he received a prison sentence of 12.5 years. A police officer was assigned to investigate a vehicle, unaware that it was a bait vehicle intentionally placed to catch potential theft. Upon inspecting the vehicle, the officer secretly took possession of pills and over $1,000 in cash. However, when reporting back, the officer falsely claimed that there was nothing of value in the car. Unbeknownst to the officer, the police department had intentionally planted the cash and pills in the vehicle. Interestingly, all of this incriminating behavior was recorded on the officer's body camera.
Crooked cop is caught in the act on his own body camera video. The key piece of evidence led to the conviction of a former MTSU police officer just this month.
Now, the case started with a missing AR-15, and as News Channel 5's Nick Barris shows us, it ended with an elaborate sting, all caught on camera.
This is a body camera footage from former MTSU officer Marco Burke as he approaches an abandoned vehicle on campus last year. Unbeknownst to him, this was a planned operation to test Burke's reaction when faced with temptation.
An integrity test.
Chief Buddy Peaster had suspicions that Burke, a former MTSU officer, had stolen an AR-15 from an MTSU police locker, but he lacked concrete evidence. To gather proof, the Murfreesboro police arranged a sting operation on campus, deploying a bait car equipped with hidden cameras. Officer Burke was assigned to investigate the abandoned vehicle alone. In the recorded footage, we witness Burke's focus as he discovers and discreetly pockets a bottle of pills. He then proceeds to take possession of $1,100 in cash and another bottle of pills. Shortly thereafter, Burke reports no unusual findings to dispatch, concealing his illicit actions. 2 police officers were taken into custody on charges related to public corruption. It appears that these officers were engaged in fraudulent activities involving the misappropriation of taxpayer funds. They would allegedly arrive late and leave early, yet manipulate their time logs to reflect otherwise, thereby exploiting overtime pay. Such actions amount to stealing from the taxpayers. It is believed that they accumulated more than $120,000 through these illicit practices.
Federal prosecutors say it was a years-long scheme to fraudulently obtain overtime money. Money they say was federal funding to support highway safety programs like sobriety checkpoints. Former Lieutenant Daniel Griffin and former Sergeant William Robertson allegedly arrived late to their shifts and left early and falsified records.
To create the impression that they were working the entire overtime shift, Griffin and Robertson ensured that their co-conspirators all entered the same false number of hours worked into the system and entered false citation times to make it look like they were working the full 4-hour overtime shift when instead it was something less.
2 police officers from Columbus have been arrested and are currently in jail, facing federal drug charges. The FBI was responsible for apprehending them. What makes this case particularly intriguing is that these 2 officers were originally assigned as narcotic officers and are now themselves being incarcerated for federal drug charges.
Those police officers are in jail on federal drug charges.
NBC4's Catherine Ross is live at police headquarters with what we're learning about this FBI investigation.
Yeah, Hattie and Matt, good morning. Well, so far we haven't learned too much. We are expecting to learn the details about those cases when the officers appear in court later today. But so far, the city and the Division of Police here have not released any information. Now, here's what a source confirms to our NBC4 anchor, Carrie Charles. They say that officers John Koczkowski and Marco Marino were arrested on federal drug charges by FBI agents on Tuesday. Both officers are part of the narcotics division at CPD. Now, according to state prison records, Koczkowski is being held in the Delaware County Jail. Marino is at the Correction Center of Northwest Ohio. Booking information for both does not include the charges that they're facing.
This is Todd Pate attending his hearing. It is important to note that the defendant is not typically the person standing before the judge. Todd Pate, the former sheriff of Breckinridge County, is facing multiple charges including assault, operating under the influence, his second offense, criminal mischief, and leaving the scene of an accident. Today, the 51-year-old is present in court to change his plea from not guilty to guilty, a decision he has already confirmed in writing. By doing so, he will receive a reduced sentence of only 75 days in jail, as opposed to a potential maximum sentence of 15 years if he were to proceed with a trial and be found guilty on all charges.